Hello and welcome to Express Sports Podcast. You're listening to Game Time with me, Mihir Vasavda. As always, sitting across me for a change is Vinayakk Mohanarangan, and joining us from Gwalior all the way after doing a long tour from Greater Noida to Kanpur and now to this beautiful city of Gwalior is Pratyush Raj, having covered a non-test match between Afghanistan and New Zealand, a test match that never happened, to a test match that almost didn't happen in Kanpur, and the colour that we all saw there, to now being in Gwalior for a return of international cricket of sorts. We'll be talking about the India-Bangladesh Test series. We'll be recapping that, talking about everything that went right and wrong on field, off field, everything that clicked for Rohit Sharma, Gautam Gambhir and their team, and everything that didn't for the Bangladeshis. But before we get into that, there is also the important Women's T20 World Cup going on. And, we were, of course, in two minds कि हमें ये हफ्ते बात करनी चाहिए या next week बात करनी चाहिए. Then we thought, अभी तो just Women's World Cup is warming up, so we'll save it for later. But, Vinayakk, before we move to Pratyush and him taking us through the treasure hunt that he described Kanpur as, why don't you give us a lowdown on the Women's World Cup and what do we expect since the big tournaments just started on Friday?
Yeah. By most accounts, it's considered to be possibly the closest World Cup that we could have, especially given the past World Cups have not exactly been close, given Australia's dominance, winning 6 out of 8 editions. So that's, sort of dominance that we've not seen in any sport. Very few teams have come to dominate sport and event as Australia's women's cricket team have. But it could, they might still end up winning it, but it won't be easy this time around, given the playing field that has gotten closer, the teams that have improved around the world. The women's 100 probably more popular than the men's 100. Women's 100, what it's done for the English domestic game, what the WPL has done for the Indian domestic players. So given all that, the field is expected to be tighter. It's still only 10 teams, so it's not a long World Cup as we have come to be used to with the men's cricket. So it's still 10 teams divided into 2 groups, 4 top 2 teams entering the semi-finalists. So it's going to be very tight for India. They're in a tougher of the 2 groups. So going to be interesting to see how it goes. So we'll keep an eye out on that, and hopefully next week we'll have a clearer picture of where India are and where the world is in terms of the women's game getting closer. Before we get into the whole Kanpur, India, Bangladesh thing, I would ask Pratyush to weigh in. Pratyush bhai, how do you see the Women's World Cup panning out? Is this India's year?
No, I have my doubts. I think Australia winning this all the way. So,
right,
they'll make it 7 times.
I don't know what you guys think actually. Vinayakk and I was just watching. So we're recording this a couple of hours before India's first match of the T20 World Cup, and we're seeing West Indies and South Africa playing. And Vinayakk was saying that it's the temperature feels like 48 degrees. So at some level, I feel that it might not just be skills that will decide this World Cup. It might be the team that has better fitness, and they plan the tournament accordingly, right?
Yeah,
how many teams are playing afternoon matches? How many teams are playing evening matches?
And Australia are, when it comes to planning and fitness and all that, Australia are a cut above the rest.
And I was reading somewhere that England have just
England too
made
have
this.
Abu Dhabi. So I have a feeling England is probably the closest challenger to Australia. But I'm not ruling India out just yet. But like Pratyush said, I do have my doubts. But I think it's not going to be easy for Australia. That's my biggest thing.
I think the two of you have reverse jinxed.
As what Mihir said, I think fielding is going to be very crucial, and I was reading somewhere it will be difficult under that heat also. कौन कितना fit है वही matter होगा, and that's where Australia had that cutting edge over all the teams. Like वो कुछ छोड़ते नहीं. If you see that women's cricket team of Australia, they don't slip anything. वो एक भी chance नहीं छोड़ते. So that's going to be a key. If India will keep the fielding intact, that's where we are lacking whatever we have seen in the previous 2 series. Then we have a chance. Otherwise, फिर बहुत मुश्किल होगा.
So we'll see. It's still very early days of the Women's T20 World Cup. So we'll keep a close eye on that, and we'll cover the tournament in depth as it progresses. Moving on to that series that very recently concluded emphatically. Of course, we're talking about the huddle talk, which Pratyush, you were there, that Ashwin described, and where Rohit Sharma said, hammer and tongs jayenge, let's finish this in... practically, it was less than 2 days, Pratyush? The cricketing side was fascinating, but यार थोड़ा सा कानपुर जो शहर है as a test cricket host, बहुत ही जबरदस्त एक्सपीरियंस आपका है. Clearly
after Greater Noida, I thought कुछ होगा. Then after day 3 का report when I sent Tushar ji just dropped me a text. You are a bad omen for Test cricket. so luckily, I mean,
Tushar, for the uninitiated, is like one of our old hands on the desk and fabulous reporter too. So Tushar Bhadri is what Pratyush is referring.
Pratyush, at that point, for over 8 days of Test cricket, you had covered 35 overs. Right?
35 overs, and that too was so frustrating. I mean, what happened, I will tell you, when India walked out to bat and the way Rohit Sharma started, and the entire Bangladesh 11 who were on the field, and even those Bangladeshi traveling journalists, they were cell-shocked. Like, कि ये क्या हो रहा है भाई? I mean, the way Rohit started it, and as we mentioned it, like, he walked the talk. I mean, that's what Rohit Sharma is all about. He has changed his style of batting after that 22, the Adelaide wala fiasco in Australia. Uske baad se we have seen that change. He's not anymore going for those numbers or records. Usko matlab hi nahi hai. And what happened in those 2 days, the most fascinating, before I'll go to Langur and the cause and everything and all those things, the one thing that I noticed that really enjoyed the most was the way crowd turned up on those 2 days, especially on Monday and Tuesday, and Jasprit Bumrah की bowling. हमने देखा है ना टीवी पे in like if you are playing at Lords or Manchester, वो ball लेके भाग रहा है and then पूरा crowd is like ooh, and the moment there's oohs and ahs, the entire 30,000 people are doing oohs and ahs. So I experienced it because the Kanpur का again the press box is open. मतलब it's like you are sitting on a 40 degree, वो ओवन में दोनों साइड से लू चल रहा है. हाँ, so it was
very old school.
Yeah, it's very old school. Like, so that was an experience that I'll never forget. Forget Rohit Sharma, forget Jaiswal or like everything, but that Bumrah and the way Bumrah, if you even look at his bowling, he's probably a cheat code. I think he's better than Haaland also. And Haaland needs a KDB to set up a goal. But Bumrah खुद करता है सब कुछ. Like he does that, he plays with the brain of batsman. कि उसको बेवकूफ बना देता है. Imagine last ball before the extended session, he bowled that off spin to Musafikar and middle stump just went off. Like and he has done it so many times. That was cricketing, all that. But beyond cricket, this very fascinating stuff happened.
Before we move to beyond cricket, now you mentioned Rohit Sharma. And मुझे वो point थोड़ा सा interesting लगा that you made about him walking the talk and the way he leads the team out as well, because like जो भी हमारे 2-4 regular listeners रहेंगे, I mean हमारा जो stance रहा है on Rohit's captaincy, that's like being wavering a lot. Sometimes I feel that India lacks that whole Virat Kohli's aggression on field, and Rohit Sharma sometimes is just his emotions are too out there, his body language is going up and down and all those things. But I must say, like, the way he's grown as a captain in this role and all, it's grown on me. His leadership style, the way he just keeps everything calm, and, the players also around him seem to be calm in intense situations. So that's like a great thing, and the way he's grown into captaincy.
I think what Rohit has done for sure is having the team buy into his sort of philosophy. I mean, we don't know all the time what goes on behind the scenes in the dressing room. It's all like, it's a sacrosanct place and all that. But what we've heard from people like Ashwin and all these guys talk about is how comfortable he's made the team environment, right? Like he gives like the youngsters and the senior guys the same sort of pace and lets them, these are cliches, express yourself, be true to yourself and all that. It seems like the team has bought into that. I'm personally a big fan of the Virat Kohli Test captaincy era. It had its ups and downs with the whole chopping and changing and the horses for courses policy. But Virat truly brought that verve into the Test captaincy and the importance that he gave to Tests. And I think Rohit has done well to carry that on. And it's very evident that I think the biggest takeaway for me from Kanpur Test was India really, really respects Test cricket. And it's not just for saying, a Test is called Test because it tests your character, all that sorts of things that we hear from former cricketers. India really walked the talk when it comes to placing Test cricket at the pedestal. There is absolutely no other way they would have gone for a win over 2 days, because they value a WTC final for starters, and they value Test cricket in general because they see that as like the pinnacle. So I think Rohit has done well to carry it on from the Virat.
Just one example, on day 4 when the team walked out, I mean, we Rohit ko bolte hain na, this thing ki we have this notion about Virat aggressive, but Rohit bahut aggressive hai. I'm telling you, because the first over when Bumrah started, immediately for Mominul Haq there was a flying slip. Because the first inning he was doing that uppercut and all. There was a square leg, there was a deep square leg, there was a deep fine leg. He was going for the win from ball one. And it is the bowlers who won them the match. Obviously, yes, the India batted like really well, but to take 17 wickets inside 2 days.
Yeah.
I mean, that too, that's fascinating. And then India have that attack also. I mean, it's just one very controversial thing that I'll say again here, because Virat Kohli, we love Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli was fast bowling's captain. At times, we feel that Virat Kohli never had a plan B. But with Rohit, he always has plan B. When he will introduce Ravindra Jadeja, whether how to use a swing, even if he has picked up 3 pacers, the 8th over of the first day, Ravi Ashwin was bowling. So that we have seen with what Ajinkya Rahane did at MCG way back in that famous Test series win. And with Virat, we will never see that. He will keep the spinners at bay. He will give his pacers more like go and bowl. But with Rohit, if the plan A doesn't work, he have that plan B ready. That's what I feel. I may be completely wrong. Yeah.
No, it's true. I think Ajinkya Rahane was a perfect blend of both Virat's aggression and Rohit's calmness. But sometimes you also feel कि थोड़ा सा चलो, I'll not get into that. And,
maybe that will be a nice thing to do before BGT starts. The forgotten Rahane series.
वो प्रत्युष मुझे वापस मुंबई लॉबी बोलना शुरू कर देगा. वो डर से आगे कुछ नहीं बोला. But नहीं यार, मतलब I still feel कि like Vinayakk said, I'm a big fan of the Kohli era of the captaincy in Indian Test cricket. Bangladesh, to beat them on home soil, चाहे जो भी हो, 2 दिन में हो या 5 दिन में हो, it doesn't matter. To quote Sehwag, it's just Bangladesh. To paraphrase Sehwag. तो I think हम देखेंगे कि अभी न्यूजीलैंड टेस्ट सीरीज एंड देन ऑस्ट्रेलिया के तब कैसे एग्जैक्टली होता है. बट प्रत्युष यार, ये सीरीज मतलब टेस्ट क्रिकेट तो था ही, बट आपकी भी काफी सारी इसमें टेस्ट हो गई थी. एक तो पहले ग्रेटर नोएडा कैसा था यार, वो बताओ थोड़ा. वहां से शुरुआत करते हैं और फिर कानपुर आते हैं.
Greater Noida was like, I did a story 10 days before the first day that was supposed to happen. And I went there, I was sent to have a look. Afghans have arrived and all. The first, it's Hastamullah Sahidi, the captain, was like very funny. कि भाई इधर अपन some swimming करने आए हैं क्या? That was the situation, right? And it's like, if you, agar us ground ko I can explain, if you take you remember that old life buoy जो आता था साबुन, that red वाला. ठीक है, आप उसको ना उल्टा कर दो, and that's the shape of the ground. It was very funny. Earlier they had only 8 ground staffs. Obviously they have only organized corporate crickets, and that when Afghanistan used to play the associate nation, right? And it was way back before COVID era and all, 2018-19 में. तो उनको first day realize हुआ, oh shit, हमारे पास covers नहीं है. ठीक है, फिर उन्होंने covers मंगाए. फिर उन्हें लगा अच्छा यार, ये तो मतलब एक सुपर सॉपर से तो नहीं होगा. It has rained. It rained heavily. To give them, cut some slack to them, it rained like really. It was पागलपन था वो. Then they said कि अच्छा एक और मंगा लेते हैं. And then the most funniest thing was like on day 2, I guess. Yeah, Kane Williamson stepped out. ठीक है, Kane Williamson holding a cup of coffee stepped out, and then वो बंदा वापस चला गया. उसने अपने बूट्स खोले, फिर वो अपने स्लीपर्स में आया, एंड देन ही एंड डेरिल मिचेल वाज लिटरली प्लेइंग, जैसे बच्चे करते हैं ना, पैर पानी में मार रहे हैं, छपाक छपाक, एंड both of them were doing that, and they were doing at that mid wicket region. तो then they realized कि अच्छा इधर का तो घास ही हटाना पड़ेगा. Then they started transplanting it. It was like वो नेट्स एरिया से घास उठा के ला रहे हैं, putting them there. It was like, so funny. Every day आपको कुछ ना कुछ मिल रहा है. The 5-day, not a ball was bowled, but I think I did more stories at Greater Noida than I do any. It was बहुत remarkable था. Then I think I carried that rain with me to Kanpur. But Kanpur started for me was like, if you could just started 3 days ago before the test match. I went there. I was talking to a coach of a bowler of Indian cricket team. He is appointed. He works there at Kanpur Sports Hostel. So we'll just having a chat. तो एक stand है balcony press box के left में. You see, and then there was the officers and one of the guy who was jumping on that. ये तो मैंने पूछा यार ये क्या कर रहा है? Then he said कि ये पूरा PWD ने इसको बंद कर दिया है. It was written by the PWD engineers. If a 6 will come, ball will land on this stand, and if everyone will jump, तो ये नीचे आ जाएगा. So that is like, मतलब that was scary. हाँ. So even उसके बाद वो बंद हुआ. And then they had, obviously Kanpur has always been a very messy, if not for the guy responsible, Mr. Rajiv Sukla, that city or that venue doesn't deserve a test match. Forget an international match. That venue doesn't deserve even an IPL match. उनका flood light का structure is very weird. एक जो flood light है उसकी light आती है सीधे सेट पे. वो सेट बना दिया ऊपर. ठीक है, to increase the capacity said ऊपर बढ़ा दिया है. If you remember the 2021 test match, Sandeep ji covered that test match. I remember New Zealand survived the last session. There was match was stopped due to bad light. And they survived. India needed 1 wicket. Because of pollution, there is a bad light, poor visibility, obviously. And then what happened on day 3 was very frustrating. And before day 3, I'll come to, on the eve of the match, so there is this guy, Mr. Sanjay Kapoor. Sanjay Kapoor, venue director, you'll see his cutouts with Rajiv Shukla if you walk around the Kanpur streets. तो हर जगह. The only place in UP जहाँ पे आपको double engine की सरकार नहीं दिखी. You can't see Modi and Yogi welcoming India and a Bangladesh player. It was Mr. Shukla ji and then Sanjay Kapoor, the venue director. And he is the guy he got famous. He got his 2-minute fame when Virat Kohli refused to shake hand, and that reel has gone viral. He was there at the Landmark Hotel जहाँ पे वो रुके हुए थे. विराट कोहली को गुलदस्ता दिया. विराट कोहली ने बोला सर मेरे 2 ही हाथ हैं, दोनों हाथ इज ऑक्युपाइड. So that guy used to run with 5 or 6 video person. उसका रील बनता था. And if Virat and Rohit is training at the nets, he will go and just stand there parallelly. वो नहीं होता जो यूपी में होते हैं जो that छोट भैया नेता अभी से कि आज विधायक जी से मिलने का काम किया, ठीक है, and then that post that photo and video on social media अपने प्लेटफॉर्म पे. He was that guy. Then he
WhatsApp DP बन जाएगा उनका.
हाँ, he held up PC. He came and some local journalist asked in कानपुरिया tone, अरे कपूर साहब यहाँ पे तो बंदरों का आतंक है, तो हमने बंदर पकड़ने के लिए लंगूर बुला रखे हैं. ठीक है. And he said that, and I did a story on that, and then next day I got a call from PETA. Some lady called me and asked me for his number. मैंने दे दिया. मैंने आप बात कर लो, जो भी है अभी वो कर लो. The monkey came. The locals were surprised that match was not interrupted because of the stray dogs. They made sure that all the stray dogs are captured, even the cause, and जो गाय माता को भी उन्होंने capture कर रखा था. There was 4 trucks that was running across the stadium. जो पशुपालन विभाग का था, वो स्ट्रे डॉग्स एंड जो स्ट्रे काउज होते हैं, एनिमल्स, उन सबको पकड़ के डाल रहे थे. So it was
great color.
They're great for reporting.
But Vinayakk, this of course has given rise to this whole debate about having minimal test centers and all those things. Vinayakk, where do you stand on that debate?
Again, to go back to the Virat Kohli era, where in a setup where you don't have cricketers come out and say things that openly disagrees with how the game is run in the country, Virat did a really impressive thing back in 2019 in Ranchi. I think it was the India-South Africa series where the cricket was great but the turnout wasn't, and he strongly believes that India needs to have test centers like the way England does, Australia does. And it's not to restrict test cricket to a few centers, it's actually to make sure that people know that, in like how
benchmark.
There is on December 26th there will be a test match at MCG. You know that. It doesn't matter where here, which team, who's touring what is happening. So that helps you plan, that helps you keep the stadium ready, things like that. I mean, in the history of Indian cricket, we've had that in the past. We've had a Pongal test in Chennai. Things like that. Like that's what mentioned by Abhinav Mukund also during the Chennai test. You'd love to see a Pongal test back in January. There is that January 2nd week there's going to be a test match in Chennai. So you plan accordingly. Fans across the country can come. Your allocation of tickets gets easier. Buying, planning, everything just becomes easy. And teams know that these are the pitches that you're going to get. It's great to have a variety, and given the volume of centers in India, maybe 5 is not feasible, but have 7 or 8. And about Kanpur, it's not just like Kanpur actually had a really good turnout, like Pratyush mentioned, right? Even on the days that there was no cricket, fans turned up in huge numbers. So fan turnout is not a problem. Kohli said this in terms of fan turnout in Ranchi. That's not a problem in Kanpur. But the stadium, the stories that we heard from Pratyush and what we saw also, without rain, single drop of rain, still no play being possible. That can't be happening in 2024 in a country like India where you have 50 world-class venues, right?
Yeah.
That's simply not done. There is no excuse for that. I don't care who owns the stadium, who decides where matches get allotted. There's no excuse for that. So
if you don't have limited number of venues, that's okay. But at least don't
right.
be so.
At least be smart about the venues you choose for a test match where it's so much hangs in the balance. If India didn't go for the win, it was an improbable win at that point. As Pratyush Day 3 report said, it's improbable at that point that we're going to get a result in this match. Then Rohit and everyone turned up and they made it possible. But otherwise, you're drawing a home test against Bangladesh when that could end up costing you basically in the World Test Championship final. And because of what? Because of a clerical, whatever.
But Pratyush, thoda sa it's also interesting, right? Because I mean, the common link between the Greater Noida match and the Kanpur match is both these stadiums are in Uttar Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh doesn't really seem to have a test class stadium. I don't know if Ikana in Lucknow they have the required permissions.
They don't even have their own cricket stadium nearby. And to be very precise, the association... They don't have a cricket ground of their own. The one that is...
The association.
Association. The one that they are building at Banaras, that will be the sole ground, international ground, jo UPCA ke under hoga. So if you see this guy, I'm bringing Rajiv Sukla's name. Rajiv Sukla is running UPCA, although he doesn't hold any kind of post nahi hai. He is the guy who has been part of the BCCI for past 3 decades, almost 3 decades. But still, after that, UP is such a massive state, such a big state, and आपके पास international level के stadiums नहीं हैं. Green Park is owned by the Kanpur Sports Department Authority. It is on a lease, given on a lease to UPCA. Ekana Stadium is again, it's a business proposal. It is again leased to UPCA, but the day it will start, it is at MOU, this very weird clause. The day it will start making profit, it will be given to the UPCA. Right, but in Kanpur it's not. Kanpur is the only thing वहाँ पे है that it bearing like वो iconic भी नहीं कह सकते उसको. ठीक है, iconic है, and like as Akashdeep, I don't know was it sarcastic or not. A day before the test match, he said कि growing up in Bihar, उसको लगा Green Park में सब कुछ हरा भरा ही होगा. It's nothing green there. The only green thing is that Madam Green used to do. वहाँ पे एक stadium करती थी, तो उनके नाम पे वो stadium है. And there's nothing fancy about that stadium. At least, like Vinayakk mentioned, it's not unforget. It's not a test का आपका. You have to play it, make it 8 to 10. अगर आपको इतना बड़ा country है, but at least there should be cities should have good hotels. But I have heard that players were not happy. A player refused to come for the press conference because जहाँ press conference होता है वहाँ की हालत इतनी खराब. They are not happy. So, just let it go. Just make other centers. No, we have better cricket stadiums in India than Kanpur.
Yeah, of course. Test centers की तो कमी नहीं है, and like with every state now promising a cricket stadium of their own, I don't think वो भी कोई issue होगा. Ashwin का interesting point था that, he of course didn't commit to a stand, but he said that when we travel to Australia, for example, fixed venues होते हैं, they don't host India at Canberra or any other quote-unquote venues which aren't, big, so to say. Of course, India will be traveling to Australia later this year, and like Vinayakk mentioned, the team knows well in advance कि वो कहाँ पर खेलने वाले हैं, कैसे conditions होंगे, वहाँ पर क्या expect करना है. As fans, if you want to travel, you can. There are so many benefits to it. And अभी भी it beats me कि आप धर्मशाला जैसा venue test match के लिए regularly use नहीं कर रहे हो. It's like a win-win situation in terms of tourism and everything. But yeah, these are issues जिसका I don't think it's a straightforward answer.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem, what we can see is like lobbying, right? Administratively, how many state associations will be happy to give test cricket? You never know. But the fact that you're able to, India's test cricket season is not the be-all and end-all of hosting matches. So if a venue is a dedicated test center, then come to an arrangement where you're saying like every season you'll get to host a test, but you'll not get a white ball match. If the state associations agree, then it's a win-win, right? You said like a white ball, you're going to get shorter attention, more crowds, probably more money than a test match. But once you know that test centers are fixed, even Chennai, like everyone commonly agrees on Chennai being a test center, right? Chennai and Wankhede.
Sorry to interrupt you, Vinayakk, but जो भी journalist, whoever has gone to Chennai, I've never been to, the hospitality, everything. The Chennai के बारे में जिस तरीके से बात करते हैं Mihir bhai, it's like, I felt like यार कभी, someday I'll just go there and just for the sake of covering a match. Because the way they talk about Chennai, right from the ODI World Cup I'm hearing, it's so amazing. The way they take care of the journalists, it's very old school. यहाँ पे तो कानपुर का मैं क्या बोलूँ आपको, I'll start using the Kanpur lingo, but बाद में बात करते हैं.
वो थोड़ा सा beeps use कर देंगे इसमें. But we'll start wrapping up nearing the end of this episode. If we were to look at cricket and the takeaways from this series. There are plenty of them. But Vinayak, what would top your list heading into the whole New Zealand series as well? Of course, the limited over series against Bangladesh is still underway, but
the fact that India is probably the toughest place to play Test cricket in the world, I think it's just been reiterated.
18 series in a row.
Yeah, and not lost a series since England came with Grant Swan in his peak form. So yeah, that has been reiterated. New Zealand won't be this easy, I'm guessing, even though they struggled in Sri Lanka. But I mean, all said and done, India have proven themselves to be the most dominant home Test country in the world right now. We probably don't give enough credit to India for that. It's always like, what do India do in Sena, right? It was South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia. We always come to that when it comes to Indian Test cricket. I think it's a record that, or a streak that needs to be appreciated more, just for how casually we've come to expect India to win Test series at home. Like it's nothing, right? I mean, winning Test series at home is not easy because everyone could do it. Even Australia don't have this sort of dominance at home. So that, I think, was reiterated, and the genius of Ashwin, Jadeja and Bumrah. Bumrah, Pratyush spoke so much about Ashwin had a fabulous match in Chennai, to do that probably in his last Test at home. You never know how long he's going to play for, but with the rotation of venues, who knows when next Chennai will host a Test match. So to do that in front of his family, score a century and take a six for his, just what will India do after Ashwin is a question that keeps coming up. And Jadeja too, with this 300th wicket, the Ashwin-Jadeja combination continues to deliver, and when Bumrah bowls, you just want to stop everything and watch. And it's not often you say that about a fast bowler in India.
But Pratyush, we've spoken a lot about bowling. Just to kind of wrap this episode up, looking forward to the New Zealand series and beyond that in Australia, thoda sa batting, do you think is a concern, especially in the top order?
Batting, I think the most satisfying thing was to see Rishabh Pant back. I think Rishabh Pant, the way he batted, and the Rishabh Pant, the wicket keeper, is always like is a cherry on cake. But seeing Rishabh back, and good to see KL Rahul scoring some runs. KL scoring is very crucial, because if you are playing in Australia, because Sarfaraz is on his heels. Sarfaraz has scored a double century in the Irani Trophy. So the only concern that I see is Virat Kohli's struggle against the spinners. It is like, I don't know, it's going on for some time against the left-arm spinners or any spinner. It may be because he lacked match practice or whatever. He'll play 3 tests, he'll get better. In Australia, obviously, Virat is something else. But wahan pe that's this, like, I don't think, it's too harsh to say, but Virat's struggle against spinner is something that it's a bit of concern going into this New Zealand series.
Yeah, and Yashasvi at the top too is interesting, gives like a nice push.
I don't want Yashasvi to score big hundreds in here. Just ठीक है 60-70 करो, go Australia and then play there. If he'll do well here, यहाँ पे I don't want him to carry that baggage. कि वो Bradman-esque average लेके उधर जा रहा है, then couple of failures here and there, and then हम ही होंगे जो बोलेंगे यार technique सही नहीं है, he's not fit for Australia too. I just want him to carry on, score run, keep scoring those 50s, 60s, save those big daddy hundreds for down under.
Pratyush, you just sounded like Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma said the exact same thing after his England series. I don't want to talk about Yashasvi.
चलो हम अभी ज्यादा नजर नहीं लगाते हैं. I think that should be that for this week. काफी सारे और टॉपिक्स है from this series to pick on. लंगूर तक तो हम पहुंचे नहीं, बंदर स्टेडियम तक पहुंच गए थे. लंगूर ने क्या किया वो हम जानेंगे शायद नेक्स्ट वीक. प्रत्युष जी, आप ग्वालियर में हैं अभी, वहां से the whole bandwagon shifts, and before the series I think ends in Hyderabad. I think the last second venue that was added to the series, and of course the T20 World Cup that's going on, that will be on agenda too. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Vinayakk, Pratyush and me saying goodbye to you. We'll see you all next week.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.